Today's top 3 security stories are all about systems that sit on trust boundaries. First, critical Apache Traffic Server flaws, including request smuggling, policy bypass, and certificate generation risk at the edge. Second, Netty OCSP validation bugs that can weaken revoke certificate handling in Java services. Third, Apache Kyuubi and Apache Atlas issues inside data platforms, where proxy behavior and missing authorization can put internal systems at risk. The main takeaway for builders and businesses is simple: proxy layers, TLS libraries, and data platform admin panels are control plane security surface. Patch them, restrict reachability, and verify the assumptions between gateways and origins. The headline is Apache Traffic Server. NVD lists multiple newly published CVEs affecting Apache Traffic Server 8, 9, and 10 branches, with fixed versions listed as September 2, 15 or 10.1.4. Apache Traffic Server is commonly used as a reverse proxy, caching layer, or edge gateway in front of web applications and APIs. That placement makes parsing bugs and policy confusion especially important, because the proxy may be the component deciding which request is allowed, which origin receives it, and what headers or protocol details are trusted downstream. CVE 2026-57834 is listed by NVD as CVSS 10 critical. The issue concerns malformed chunked message handling and can allow request smuggling. CVE 2026-58150 is also listed as CVSS 10 critical and involves HTTP/2 transfer encoding handling that can allow downgrade request smuggling. CVE 2026-58155 is listed as critical as well, with overlong header names that may lead to header aliasing, request smuggling, and policy bypass. These are not stories about one exotic endpoint. They are about the boundary where clients, proxies, and origins have to agree on what a request actually means. Why does request smuggling matter? In normal operations, a proxy and an origin server should parse the same traffic the same way. If they disagree, a malicious request can sometimes be interpreted as one thing by the front end and another thing by the back end. The defensive impact can include bypassing routing rules, confusing authentication checks, interfering with cache behavior, or reaching admin paths that were supposed to be protected by the gateway. This video includes no payloads or exploit walkthroughs, but the operational message is clear: prioritize internet-facing proxies, shared gateways, authentication paths, and administrative API routes. CVE 2026-58162 is the other Apache Traffic Server issue to review carefully. NVD describes a Certifier plugin risk where certificates can be generated based on attacker-controlled client SNI. SNI is the server name indication sent during TLS negotiation. When certificate or routing decisions rely on data supplied by a client, plugin exposure and configuration become critical. If you use traffic server plugins in front of multiple tenants, internal services, or sensitive hosts, this is a good time to inventory which plugins are enabled, where they are reachable, and whether any certificate automation paths are unnecessarily exposed. The recommended Apache Traffic Server action is straightforward: upgrade affected deployments to September 2, 15 or 10.1.4, then verify configuration. But teams should not stop at the package version. Check whether old instances remain in container images, staging environments, blue-green pools, or disaster recovery paths. Review custom parsing rules and non-standard HTTP behavior. Compare proxy rules with origin server rules. Make sure logging captures rejected malformed requests and unusual protocol downgrade behavior. If the proxy protects authentication or admin APIs, those paths deserve the fastest change window. The second story is Netty. NVD and the GitHub security advisories list 2 high-severity OCSP validation issues affecting versions before 4.1.136.final and 4.2.16.final. Netty is a widely used Java networking framework, so many teams may depend on it indirectly through application frameworks, RPC stacks, data systems, or internal services. OCSP, the Online Certificate Status Protocol, is used to check whether a certificate has been revoked. Revocation handling is one of those security controls that can be invisible when it works and painful when it silently fails. CVE 2026-56821 concerns replay of an out-of-date good OCSP response. The advisory says a response could be flagged as out of date but still treated as valid, allowing a revoked certificate to be accepted in some conditions. CVE 2026-56822 concerns asynchronous OCSP validation, where a handshake completion event can be forwarded before validation finishes. In practical terms, application data may be sent before the revoked connection is closed. Neither issue means every Netty application is automatically exposed in the same way, but services relying on Netty TLS and OCSP should upgrade and test revocation behavior. For engineering teams, the Netty checklist is: identify direct and transitive Netty dependencies, upgrade to 4.1.136.final or 4.2.16.final where applicable, rebuild containers rather than only changing source manifests, and run a staging test that confirms revoked or stale OCSP conditions fail closed. If your environment terminates TLS at a separate load balancer, still check internal Java services that use mutual TLS, service mesh integrations, or custom clients. Also review whether dependency scanners are seeing the actual runtime artifact rather than only the top-level project files. The third story moves into data platforms. CVE 2026-23904 affects Apache Kyuubi from 1.8.0 before 1.12.0. The issue is in the engine UI proxy. NVD and Apache references describe behavior where a host and port from the request path can be used to proxy to arbitrary reachable hosts, creating SSRF or open-proxy risk. Version 1.12.0 disables that proxy by default. Server-side request forgery matters in data and analytics environments because those systems often sit close to internal APIs, metadata services, storage endpoints, and privileged service identities. Kyuubi defenders should upgrade to 1.12.0, confirm whether the engine UI proxy is disabled, and restrict who can reach Kyuubi web interfaces. Treat analytics components as systems that should not freely reach the entire internal network. If possible, block cloud metadata service access from these workloads, enforce egress allow lists, and check logs for unusual proxy destinations. Even when a feature is intended for convenience, a path that turns user-controlled input into backend network requests deserves network-level containment. CVE 2026-50622 affects Apache Atlas from version 0.8 through 2.5.0. NVD describes missing authorization on admin endpoints, where any authenticated user may be able to perform administrative operations regardless of role. The listed fix is Apache Atlas 2.6.0. Atlas is a metadata and governance system, so admin actions can affect policies, classifications, glossaries, and visibility into enterprise data. The risk depends on who can authenticate and what admins can change in a specific deployment, but role checks on admin functions are fundamental. For Apache Atlas, upgrade to 2.6.0, review admin endpoint exposure, and audit recent privileged changes. Check group mappings, service accounts, stale users, and any integrations that may authenticate broadly. If your Atlas instance is reachable through a corporate SSO path, remember that authenticated is not the same as authorized. Access should be role-limited, logged, and reviewed, especially for governance actions that affect downstream data access or compliance workflows. Zooming out, the common thread today is not one vendor or one protocol. It is control plane placement. Edge proxies decide what reaches applications. TLS libraries decide which connections are trusted. Data platform proxies decide what internal systems can be reached. Metadata and governance tools decide who can administer data context. These layers often get deployed as infrastructure plumbing, but attackers care about them because a small parsing or authorization mistake can have wide blast radius. Today's practical checklist: upgrade Apache Traffic Server to September 2, 15 or 10.1.4, upgrade Netty to 4.1.136.final or 4.2.16.final, upgrade Apache Kyuubi to 1.12.0, upgrade Apache Atlas to 2.6.0, restrict proxy and admin endpoints, disable unnecessary plugins and proxy features, compare gateway and origin parsing expectations, block metadata service access from data platform components, monitor for malformed HTTP traffic, unusual proxy destinations, unexpected admin changes, and suspicious TLS. Revocation behavior. Sources are in the description. This is a defensive briefing only, with no exploit code, payloads, or step-by-step attack chains.